Check.
Let's get your laptop display.
What am I doing?
No, you will have to start sharing the screen in Connect.
Presentation for our photography club a few months ago.
My first photo is a wee bit underexposed.
Do you want to try switching this?
What am I messing up?
No, I think that's all good.
Okay.
You might want to try switching this. Do you mind if I take it off?
No, go ahead. Whatever you need.
It's hard to do it. There were two different books she did. She did with the window seat. And she did another one where she actually fixed the engine. There is the passenger seat. Trees. And
Okay, there we go. Great. Yep, I think we're good. Yep.
Okay, hi, let's start. Yes? Yes? Okay. 7 o'clock, you have pizza? Everything is good? Happy?
701.
You're gonna go to sleep? I know how this works, we feed you. I don't feel responsible when you go to sleep. I never know who should be more embarrassed when people fall asleep. Me, for not keeping you awake, or you for falling asleep. All right, so my name is Julieanne Kost. I work for Adobe. Have any of you heard me present before? Oh, they're the same jokes, you guys. They're the same jokes. There's nothing I can do. The number of nerdy jokes is really small, right?
Short memory.
And I do, yeah, the memory thing. Ugh, we won't go there. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna talk about advanced Photoshop tips and techniques tonight, right? How many of you guys are photographers? Just out of curiosity? Okay, wow. All right, and designers? Oh, sorry. All right. You photographers, look at those designers. They're the ones making all the money. All right. Wow. Okay, so a lot more photographers. That's good. So one of the questions I always get, and I'm just going to take 5 minutes to go over this really quickly, because some of you might be new to like Lightroom, Photoshop, that whole thing, what's going on. I just want to spend like 5 minutes to show you what I do in Lightroom, which if you don't use Lightroom and you use Camera Raw instead, it would be what I would do in Camera Raw, and then when I go to Photoshop. It seems to be the most confusing thing that I always get asked. And then we'll jump into Photoshop and we'll do those things that I'm talking about. So, because there's also this continuum with photographers, and we're not going to have this discussion. It's like the old Mac versus Windows debate. It's like, are you a photographer? Because you know, if you put more than one photo in, like if you put a moon in there, then you're not a real photographer. Oh gosh, I don't want to have that discussion. So do you guys know Keith Carter? His work is fabulous. If you don't know his work, look him up. But he said I should just refer to myself as a lens-based artist, and then it won't matter anymore. I won't have to have this conversation. So some of you guys, though, are purists, right? And so you might remove like lens distortion, right? So that you can do in Lightroom or Camera Raw. Or you might do something like, are you allowed? I don't know, to actually, crop your image? Or what if you changed the color balance, right? So I don't know if you're allowed to do that or not as a photographer. What if you went and you made changes like that, like dodging and burning? Oh my gosh, that's crazy, right? So all of this stuff, especially all these global edits, I'm doing in Lightroom or I would be doing in Camera Raw, right? So I can make global edits like that, and I can also go in and make more subtle edits using the local tools in Camera Raw or in Lightroom too, right? So all these things, I can even go in and add light after the fact, right? By dodging and burning like this, because sometimes, like I didn't have my strobes on the Zodiac at the time. So sometimes we do what we need to do afterwards, right? We can even go in and selectively change colors and kind of maybe bring your attention to the seal in the foreground or put more color on the background, right? We can even remove some spots like that. That's a little bright there. We can even, convert to grayscale if we want to, right? So all these things. We can make panoramas. I mean, are panoramas legal? If you're a photographer, put multiple pictures together, I'm just saying. All right? So then, when do I go to Photoshop? When I have to retouch something like this, right? So you might think, oh, I could do that in Lightroom. Yeah, you probably could. You could probably do this in Camera Raw, but it would take me longer. Right? Plus, Photoshop has the content-aware technology. I'm going to use that because it's better than what I get in Camera Raw or in Lightroom. All right? An image like this. So you can't see all the dust in there. Sorry about that. It's a little too dark, so we'll just move on. Something like this. That's a Photoshop, right? I'm not going to try to fix that in Lightroom. Or an image like this. Unless I wanted to bring a rake with me, it's not going to look like that, right? So I'm going to do that kind of stuff in Photoshop. So all of these retouching techniques, that's what Photoshop is so great for, right? And then, if you want to go crazy, which sometimes I do, right? Like I just needed to open up the ice area a little bit, right? So you can see kind of the before and after, just so your eye could travel through it a little bit more easily. I know, cheater, pumpkin eater. Yep, that's me. Lens-based artist. All right, what about removing a mountain? Sure. All right. I want you to feel what I felt while I was there. I'm not a photojournalist, so I'm okay with this. Like this image, it's all about horizontal and vertical lines, right? Except for that little piece of ice on the left-hand side there. So what if we just change that a little? It does make a difference in the image, right? Sometimes they're subtle, sometimes not, okay? But I'm not gonna miss this photo, right? Like, I'm on the ship, I see this, what I feel is this. It is so quiet there, right? So that does not show what I felt. But I'm gonna take the picture because I know I can do that in Photoshop. And you know what to do? You take that photo and look at the fog right above it. You move your camera up and you take a picture of the fog. So now you have the fog to bring down, right? Some of you guys would just take one photo and then say, well, that has enough fog. I'll just select that fog and then transform it and stretch it down. What happens to your grain when you do that? Or the noise in the digital camera, right? You're gonna get one pattern structure in the foreground, and then your clouds are gonna be stretched. Which, you know what, if you're posting to social media, you might not care. It might not make a difference. But if you print these, I just printed 3 of these actually. They're on the 10th floor, and they're over 6 feet. So when you're printing at that size, you kind of need to go in and make sure that you're not distorting stuff, because people will be able to see it. Okay? Same with this one. It's like, I don't need that mountain range. Way more compelling like that, right? I mean, that's like all cloud. It's all like, I couldn't change the angle that much to get it higher or lower, so I just got rid of it. Okay? Same with that. All that stuff in the background, we don't want all that, right? Just poof, gone. It's magic. Or up in the upper left, or your upper left. Oops. Just getting rid of that little area there, doing a little color toning. So anything that's retouching based, I think you guys get the idea. Also, anytime when the selection is easier and faster to make, I will move over to Photoshop to make those kinds of adjustments. And then of course we all know with compositing, right? Because I just totally missed this shot, right? Like I wanted it to align. I was on a speedboat and it was really hard. I just totally missed it. So I fixed it. And 2 birds is always better than 1, right? So you just take another picture of the bird and the bird will have moved, right? So then, there you go. Totally different story I wanted to tell. All right, why not put a solar eclipse in there, right? Why not? Yeah? Hey, why not a night sky?
Julieanne, that's not even the southern hemisphere sky. Those are stars from the north.
Yes, they are. All right, we can put a little bit of blur, right? Because that's hard to do. Oh, look at that. It's like a, what is that up there? Northern Lights. Northern Lights right there. All right. So I can go ahead and add that in. We can add some more motion right there. And of course, we can make whatever we want. Because there was an algae bloom while I was there, and so you couldn't see under the water, unfortunately. So, and I really wanted that shot, where you stick your camera and it's half over, half under, and it was just dark. So, so I made it up. And why do I have to make it real? I don't. I could even put trees. Right? Totally up to you what you want to do. So anyway, so the 3 reasons really that I go into Photoshop for my photography, of course there's a million reasons if you're a designer, right? The text, the artboard, there's a million things. But as a photographer, it's if I need to do some retouching, because I want to use the content-aware technology, even that one with the crazy icebergs that I retouched so many, I use a clone stamp tool on that all over it, because I didn't want those soft little edges, because I knew I was going to enlarge it. I use it when the selection is easier to make, right? So I'm not going to sit there in Lightroom or Camera Raw with that one brush and just like paint, 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 paint. I've got other things to do, paint, 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 right? Because Photoshop has 500 ways to select based on color, based on focus, based on all sorts of stuff. So I'll go to Photoshop when the selection is easier to make. And then of course when I'm doing stuff like compositing like this. Okay, so let's escape out of there and let's talk about Photoshop. And let's just go over to Photoshop for a moment. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so how many of you guys are subscribing to CCPP? That's the Creative Cloud for Photography. That's Photoshop and Lightroom, okay? And how many of you guys are subscribing to either Creative Cloud Complete, you get everything, or just Photoshop, you just want one product, okay? And how many of you guys are not subscribing? Okay, one person. All right. So, a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you today. All right, we got some cool stuff that's been happening in the last few years. I want to make sure that people who are subscribing know about it. So first of all, you get this, it's called a lot of things, like the start screen, I've heard it called all sorts of names, but the thing is, it is actually a workspace. This is a workspace. So are any of you educators, by the way, do any of you guys teach? Yes, in the back, one? All right. So what you might want to know is if you don't want to see this just temporarily, like if you want to tell someone about the product or show someone something, if you go over on the right-hand side, let me go to full screen here, sorry. All right, over here on the right-hand side, and you use your little drop-down for your workspaces, you can actually choose a different workspace, and that first start screen or that start workspace will actually be hidden. Now, if you do something and then open a file and close it, then that start screen is going to appear again. Now, since this is an advanced class, you guys might not want to use it. I find it very helpful, especially with beginners. But if you ever did want to turn it off, you could go to your preferences right here and then just go to General, and it's this Show Start Workspace when no documents are open. So you can toggle that off. And then you have to read this little warning that the changes will take effect the next time you start Photoshop, right? So you'll have to quit, and then the next time you won't see the start screen. I also want to point out, and I'm just going to leave it on for now because I actually like it, right underneath that, Show Recent Files Workspace. So we have another panel as well that if you don't want that start screen, but you do want your recent files to show up, you can have those appear. And in fact, I'll go ahead and just cancel out of here and show you where that is if you just ever want to bring it up, because it's under Window and then Extensions and then Recent Files. So you probably would have looked for it like just under that big list, and you would have, there would have been the yelling, it would have been my name, and she said it was there, and then you wouldn't find it, and I'd be to blame, and I don't like the yelling. So I wanted to show you it was underneath the extension area. All right, so that'll just show your recent files, which for some of you can be very, very handy. Okay, if you ever want to clear, I don't know why you would want to do this, but let's say I open up a new document, and I'm sure you guys have explored these, right? So we now have all these different presets, which are quite nice. In fact, if I go to photo here and I want like a 2x3 landscape, and then I go, oh no, I actually want it the other way, you can just switch the orientation right over here. So that's kind of nice. So this is how you would open a new preset document. You can create your own and save them over here. Just, like you could do in the new dialog box, only there's a lot more here, including the fact that we've got all of these different templates that you can use. So you can download and use these templates. When you download them, sometimes they say that it asks you if you want to license them, but the ones here, if you go onto Adobe Stock, you can actually purchase some templates, but the ones that ship in this screen right here, you can just download and start using them. So that's pretty cool. So if I open up, I'll just open up a new document really quickly and just show you when I close that document, then I get that Start Workspace again. If you ever want to clear out these images, not sure why you would need to do that, but maybe you're working on a prototype or something, you can always come underneath the Open Recent, and then you would just come down to the bottom there, and whoops, I did not mean to select that. One moment, please. Please hold. Please hold. All right. My mouse is getting kind of caught. Maybe I'll put it on a folder or something. Didn't really do a good mouse test. All right. So where was I? I was under File, and then come down here, Open Recent, and then come down to Clear Recent Files, and basically that gets rid of all your thumbnails there. So that might be helpful. Okay, one other thing, if we go back to our preferences, if we go to the interface, you guys have been asking forever if we could highlight like the layer that's selected in a color. So now you can. So you can switch this to blue, and then, or your channels, or whatever it is that you're selecting on the palettes or panels, some of you remember, that will be highlighted. So that's quite nice. And there's one other one here too, this workspace. I don't know how many of you guys customize your workspace. I definitely customize mine, but if you don't and you just use that essential workspace, a lot of times, like if you add an adjustment layer, the panel, the adjustment, the properties panel flies out, right? Because it's in that little iconic view, but every time you add an adjustment layer, it's like, phoom, and it shows, and you're like, you go and close it, right? Well, you can just go right here and say, hey, could you auto collapse the iconic panels. Now it'll still pop out, but whenever you click somewhere else, it just puts it back for you. Okay? There you go. One happy, satisfied customer. All right. So let's go ahead and click OK and get out of there. Okay. Now you probably know you can also edit your toolbar. You can't believe how many people have asked for this over the years of Photoshop. So I demand that all of you do this. So how do you do that? Well, let's go to my workspace. And yes, my workspace is a little different. It's JK Panels. That's just what I've named it. I think I can probably get rid of this so it's not, maybe I could put it right down there. Okay, that is nothing. That's just the connect thing. But yes, my panels are on the left-hand side. Why? Because when I was growing up, I had a brother, and we had Pong. Does anyone remember this game? Yes. What did you do? It was a game of tennis. So there's a little ball, and it goes back and forth, and back and forth, and you have to hit it, right? That is what it felt like to me in Photoshop. I'd be like, oh, I've got a tool. Oh, I need my layers. Oh, I need an option. Oh, I've got the wrong tool, layer, option, layer, tool, layer, option, okay? So what I did is I just put everything on the other side, right? I'm like, yeah, I love my layers. They go right over here, right? So now it's like, boom, 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 right here, really fast. Pong to asteroids in one step, just like that. All right, so then I just save out my little workspace, and that's what it looks like. And look at this is, I'm so lazy. I put my, is anyone else lazy? Just out of curiosity, I'm lazy. Okay, so actually, the people who raise your hands, you're not the lazy ones. It's the people who were too lazy to raise their hands. I put my properties panel underneath my layers so that when I go to my layers panel, and let's just go open something. Let's go grab something from Lightroom. We can open this. I'll just open it as a regular pixel-based layer. Okay. If I add something like an adjustment layer, like hue saturation, look where my cursor is. It's already there. I don't even have to go find the panel. It's just right there. And since I add adjustment layers a lot, that makes my life easier. I like it when my life is easier. All right, let's undo that. Okay, so getting back to this whole editing the toolbar, it's up to you what tools you want to show or not show. And don't forget, you can still put it in 2 columns if you want to. All right, 2 columns or 1 column. And the way you edit it, well, the quick way you edit it is you just click and then choose to edit the toolbar. It's the 3 little dots right there, if you can see that. Sorry, it's right there, that one, the 3 dots, okay? So now you can actually undock tools. You can get rid of tools you don't use. So you're like, oh, when was the last time I used the single row marquee tool? The last time I scanned, right? And came up with that one line that just wasn't right. All right, and maybe you use the rectangular and the elliptical marquee tool a lot, so you separate them out. So now they have their own little homes over here on the toolbar. Oh yeah, see? And what if you want to change one of the shortcuts? Like you don't want your elliptical marquee to be M, you want it to be something else. Well, you could type in A. It's like, okay, but A is actually for your path select, right? A is for the path select, B is for the brush tool, C will give you cropping, and D is for your default colors. E is for the eraser tool, F will give you full screen mode, G is for the gradient, and H is for the hand tool, I is for the eyedropper, and J is for the healing brush. But K is for nothing. So we can enter in K right there, and it doesn't have to steal it from anything else. What's the other shortcut, the default letter that's not used? N for nothing. See? K and N are your 2 freebies that we haven't assigned, so you can just steal them and put them wherever you want. All right, so I thought, oh, well, I'll just put the tools here that I use all the time. Well, that was kind of silly. Why don't you put the tools that you don't use? Like the tools I use all the time, I know the shortcuts for. Like V will give me the move tool, and B will give me the brush tool, and Y will give me art history. We all know that one. Okay? So it's totally up to you. You can create as many different presets of different tool settings as you want. You can even save your tools with your workspace. So if you change, and you're doing photography today and design tomorrow, you can switch everything up at once. So it's up to you. But for now, we'll just cancel out of here because we'll now just have the default tools, which is easier when I'm giving a talk. All right. Two shortcuts that I use all the time that might help is just under the view menu. No, sorry, under window. See, I don't even know where the menu is that I want. So right here under workspace, under arrange. See, this is how long it takes me to find them, right? This one, consolidate to tabs and tile. This is really helpful if you're working with multiple images because I can quickly go back and forth between seeing all of the photos and just one photo, right? You know what I'm saying? So if I open up another new document and we just accept it, all right? So I have 2 tabs, right? And Control Tab will take you through your open documents. That's a weird shortcut on the Mac. Yes, it is. All right, Control Tab takes you through your open documents, but I use Command-Shift-T to tile everything, and then Command-Shift-R to return to single image. That's just how I remember it in my head, and it's much faster than going Window, Arrange, Window, Arrange, right? Okay, so just assign those keyboard shortcuts to the items that you use all the time. Now, we can also, actually, let me close both of these. I'm going to close that, I'm going to close that, because I want to open this as a smart object. I do this a lot, and the easiest way probably from Lightroom is just to say edit in and then open as a smart object in Photoshop. If you are in Camera Raw, there's just an option there. You can open as a smart object. I think it's holding down the Option key or the Alt key will actually switch what it says. Just hold down one of the modifiers and your open will say open object. All right, so it's not always, you don't always have to know, you just have to know how to figure it out, right? Like just hold something down and it will change, okay? So now this is a smart object. How do I know it's a smart object? Well, for one thing, I just opened it as one, but it also has the icon there, right there in my layers panel. So if I wanted to apply something like oil paint to this image, if you don't know where the feature is, I'm sure you guys have I actually think the biggest difference between like my generation and the next generation is that I didn't learn to search for everything. Like when I'm looking for something on the computer, my first instinct isn't just to go search. It's to be like, no, I know where that is. It's in my image vault folder in 2017 when I went to Antarctica. It's in that folder. I could just search for the word Antarctica, right? So in Photoshop, you can now completely search for something. So I don't know where the oil paint filter is, but if I do Command F, I get search. And I can start typing in oil paint. And it'll say, oh, look where it is. But it doesn't even matter that I know where it is. I don't have to commit that to memory because I can just click on it and it will bring up the oil paint dialog for me. That's pretty cool. All right. Yeah, well, yes, it is. We're so amazed. I can tell. Okay, so we can, what's that?
Busy typing.
Busy typing, okay, good. So now we just come in here and we can turn on the preview and we can make all of our settings and everything, and we click OK, and we have now an oil painting. If we ever want to make changes to that, because this is a smart object, it is applied as a smart filter, we can double click on it and bring it up. You'll notice I turned off the lighting. So you can turn on lighting and it gives you, let's zoom in here, gives you a lot more texture, right? It's giving you lighting, directional lighting on the paint strokes so you can see them, but you don't have to have that enabled. This is a great way if you are going to create a painting to make your first like underpainting, right? So to just kind of, because when you're painting, you're not going to get all of the frequency, the high frequency that you would get in a photograph. So it's a way to just kind of tap it back a little bit. And in fact, I have people who, they would take the image and actually resize it down and make it much smaller, like maybe 4:6 at 300 pixels per inch, run the oil paint so it's really loose and it's very painterly, and then resize that image large again so that they get that looser stroke that you would get because you started with a smaller image to begin with. Okay, so yeah, so I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, I do a lot of stuff with, let's see, should I go there yet? No, I won't go there quite yet. Okay. Just one other thing with the filters, because people do ask me, they either ask me two things with smart filters. They either want to apply multiple filters to the same layer, which is quite easy to do. But like, let's say for example, I don't know, let's say that filter, oh, you know what, I want to add a nice vignette to it, okay? So because I opened it as a smart object, if I want to edit the contents of that smart object, I just need to double click on the thumbnail for the smart object, right? It's the same as if I went to layer and then went to smart objects and then said, hey, I would like to edit the contents. But the cool thing is when I handed this off from Lightroom, or when you hand off your files from Camera Raw, if they are raw files, editing them opens them up inside the Camera Raw dialog box. So Lightroom has actually handed off a raw file and put it inside a Photoshop file. Right? Because a PSD file or a TIFF file is just a candy wrapper, right? You can put chocolate, you can put caramel, you can put a raw file, you can put text, you can put all sorts of stuff in a PSD file. So when you edit it, it brings it up in Camera Raw. Now I could go over here and I could add maybe a post-crop vignette, but that's gonna be obvious to me, right? So I don't want to do that. I want it, because I don't want it to be even all the way around. So instead I'm gonna come over here and just grab my little radial, drag it out, we can rotate it, bring it over here, maybe make it a little bit bigger, like that, maybe not quite so dark around it. How's it look up there? Oh, it's very dark. All right, so we'll just do that. All right, and then tap return or enter. So it's actually re-rendering the file for me. Right, so it's actually taking that raw data and making changes to it. It's not like it's a pixel-based document that then has to be readjusted, because that would be destructive, and this is all non-destructive. Okay? Now, if you wanted to add another filter, like let's say you wanted to add some noise to this now you kind of have to think about the order that you're going to add it in, because if I thought, oh, I want to add some grain to this, because sometimes when you add oil paint, it's just, there's not enough texture. So I might want to add a little bit of grain. Well, the thing is, if I go back in and I'm editing the contents and I come over here and I add some grain, it's going to add the grain first and then do the oil paint, right? So the oil paint's going to get rid of the grain. So I got to think about it. I say, okay, well, I don't want to do that. I need to add the grain afterwards. So why not just add another filter, right? So we come up here and we go up to, what am I looking for? Oh, how about Camera Raw, right? We can use Camera Raw as a filter, so I can select that. And then we could add grain. So this is different from editing the contents, and I'll try to add a lot just to make sure we can see it. Click OK. So editing the contents, open the raw file in Camera Raw. This adds Camera Raw as a filter, and it's adding it after the oil paint. So you can reorder these if you want to, so I can drag it down, but then you know, it kind of ruins the effect here. So just know that you can reorder those. Now, if you wanted to mask a filter, and you wanted different masks for each filter, because each grouping, I'll say, of smart filters has their own smart filter mask. So if I grab my gradient tool and we just drag a gradient from black to white, you can see there's a vignette still over here, and there's grain over here, but not over on the other side. So if I wanted the camera raw filter to have a different mask than the oil paint filter, I would just apply the oil paint, turn that into a smart object, right? Because you can nest smart objects in smart objects. And then each filter would have its own. Does that make sense, or do you want me to show you?
Show me.
Please show me. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid, okay, let's say I like this, well, I don't like that. It doesn't matter. I really don't like it. Okay, just say we use this mask somehow. Okay, so we'll just leave the gradient in it. It looks lovely. All right, so I've got the gradient. It's a little hard to see though. Can I just, or is it my angle at the screen, or is it too dark for you guys? It's okay for you guys? Okay. All right. So let's say I really want this mask here for my 2 filters, but now I want to add the diffuse glow. I want to add another filter, but I need it to have a different mask. So I only want the diffuse glow to be on one apple. All right. If I right click and say convert to smart object, it wraps that little smart object all into one. Yeah, so now you can add your next filter. So that's under filter gallery, right? Filter gallery. Filter G-A-L-L. There we go, filter gallery, okay. It's unavailable, it's unavailable. I'm sure this has never happened to you before. Why is it unavailable?
16.
Yes, 16-bit. Watch this. 8-bit. All right, now what? Filter. Looky-loo. There's filter gallery. Thank you very much. All right, what do we want? Do we want a texture? That would be kind of nice. Now let's do our little, I already started with the diffuse glow, and that's something that we can see. So if we want to, we could fit this on screen. All right, so there, that we're fine with those settings. I click OK. And here's something that's really cool. I wonder if I could apply this. Well, we'll think about it in a minute. Okay, hold on. So now I've added this smart filter onto my smart object, and it has its own mask. So I could fill that mask with black, right? That was just Command Delete to fill with your background color. I grab my paintbrush. I use Control and Option to get a bigger or smaller brush, right? Drag left or right. It's a weird shortcut. Someone on Windows, you're smarter than me. What is it on Windows? Option right click? Is that right? I don't know. Okay, hold on. Let's go to my blog. And we'll do brush size. And then we'll say changing the brush size. No, that's camera raw. Changing the brush. Oh, that's bad, Julianne. Okay, on Windows, it's Alt-right mouse drag left or right to decrease or increase the brush size. See, it doesn't matter what you know. What matters is can you find what you need to know. Ha! I often watch my own videos when I'm having to give a talk on something, which is actually not the weird part about it. The weird part about it is that I've actually seen myself say something that I know I've never known. I've never known it. And I watch myself and I'm like, no, you don't know that. All right, anyway, you've never known that. Okay, so I filled the mask for the smart filter, the diffuse glow smart filter, with black, so I'm hiding it. So I grab my paintbrush and I paint with white, and now I can paint, and you see how that mask is different from the mask that was applied to the camera raw. But now I want to make changes to that mask. Okay, no problem. Just double click on the thumbnail for the smart object, and that will open up. Okay, did you see what I did there? I read it. Okay, now that just opens it up. See, look, now I have 2 windows, right? The parent document and then the little PSB. That's my little contents of my smart object. So now I could go in and we can turn off or temporarily disable, I just held down the Shift key and you can click on that in order to turn that off. And then I save that, just Command S, and then I close that. And when it saves and closes it, it will update it in that parent document. Pretty cool. So smart objects are, well, smart. All right, and when you have a smart object, there's no like different, you don't go anywhere different for your filters. You just apply the filter and it automatically becomes a smart filter. And what I was thinking earlier was, can I go to image mode and maybe, oh, okay, that's too bad. I was gonna try to trick it. You know, I was like, well, we went to 8-bit to apply that filter, but maybe I could trick you into going to 16 with me. You know, like, here's a carrot, but it didn't take the bait. All right. Okay, so that's enough with smart objects. Oh, you should also know, like, if you applied something like that diffuse glow, over here on the right-hand side, there's these little icons, these lines with the, what are you doing there? What? Okay, there we go. All right, if you double-click on those, it will bring up your blending options as well as your opacity for your filters. Because people always ask, you know, like, okay, I applied this filter, but it's too much. How do I back off a little bit? Just double click on that little icon. What icon was that? It was the little icon right here. Wah, that little guy right there. All right? I know, bet you never even noticed it was there, right? Some of the icons are getting a little small on my monitor. I'm just saying. Okay. So it's, you notice how I blame the monitor? Yeah, all right. So let's talk about working with multiple documents. Let's close that up and let's go back to Lightroom for a minute. So let's go to layers and masking. So I have these 2 images, maybe these 3 images, and I want to open them all in, what are you telling me? You're telling me something. This little icon right here in Lightroom it's a metadata icon, and it says that the photo has been changed outside of Lightroom. So now we roll the dice and we say, I don't remember changing that. Do I want to import the settings from the disk from an application that I don't remember changing, or do we just want to override it? I like the way it looks. Let's override it. All right. Whew, nothing bad happened. Okay. You know, you guys, when you're not sure how something works, this is why I'm so happy. When I first started at Adobe, I did an 18-month sentence in technical support.
God.
That is not an easy job. No one ever calls and is like, hey, you're awesome. Bye. No, never happened once. Never. But at least I know now, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go outside and maybe take 6 pictures of my foot, bring those photos in, and use those to test. Just saying, it might be a good idea. Next time you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. Oh, let's do it to all your images at once, especially the valuable ones that you could save over and never access again. All right. Anyway, I do a lot of compositing. I want to open all 3 of these images, but when I right-click, I go, Okay, so I definitely have the option to edit in, and I can open them all in Photoshop. So 3 separate documents. I can also open as smart objects in Photoshop, but again, 3 different documents. I can also open as layers in Photoshop. Yay, single document, multiple layers, not smart. Aww. All right, so what if I go and I start in Photoshop, because I know that's where I want to end up, and I go File, New, and I say, I'm going to make this, what should this be? Probably like 10 by 8, and we'll make the orientation this way. Okay, great. So I've made a document in Photoshop. This is the size of the canvas that I want to work with, all right? And now I'm going to go to Lightroom, okay? And I'm just going to take it out of that full screen view, right? And so usually what I do is I just shrink it down, so when I'm out of full screen view. So I just need to make sure I can see both at once, right? Because if I can see Photoshop and I can see Lightroom, I can drag the 3 images on top of that canvas and drop them onto it. Now, it's going to tell me, hey, Photoshop's like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it's going to say, well, that's a RAW file. I say, yeah, so pass it through Camera Raw. I don't care. It's just the plugin. It just invokes the plugin. I go, yeah, I've already fixed that in Lightroom. So I tap Return. And then it prepares the smart object, and it auto resizes it for me to fit on the canvas, right? So it doesn't go over the canvas. You can turn that off. It's just a preference. I'll show it to you in just a minute. But I just tap Return again. So now I just go through all 3 of my images that I want to bring in. So it passes through Photoshop or Camera Raw, and then it sets it down, and I say, yes, that's the size I want it, and it just moves through it. So if we go to our preferences, preferences, that'd probably be under file handling, I would imagine. I kid. It's probably under general. Here we go. So, resize image during place. Well, I'm dragging and dropping from Lightroom onto a blank canvas, so yes, I'm placing the files. So if I don't want it to resize, I just toggle that off. But I do want it to resize. Always create smart objects when placing. Yes, please, and that's on by default. And I can skip the transform when placing, so it will still resize the image for me, but I don't have to tap return. So I can get rid of 3 returns right there. That's how much faster my life will be, okay? So I'll click OK, and yeah, if I need to make them larger, we just select them all, Command T to free transform. We'll just make those a little bit bigger. Voila, we're done. They all resize up. We can go check and see what they look like. Let's turn off the eye. The eye icon, not the eyeball icon. I was in a meeting. Just saying. It's eye icon, not eyeball. Okay. All right, do we need this background layer? No, we can delete it, right? You can just tap the delete key. I know, who knew? It took us a long time, probably like 13 versions to get that feature, right? Remember? You know, you had to like drag it to the trash or you had to unlock it or something. Nope, just tap the delete key. Sometimes we're overly cautious, you know, but it works now, so that's great. All right, so we have this layer right here, and do you guys use blend modes a lot?
Yeah.
I use them a lot, but I don't use all of them a lot. All right, so if I want these 2 layers to blend together, certainly I can use Shift plus. No, I can't, because what do I have selected? I have a paintbrush selected. So as I use the keyboard shortcut Shift plus, you will see that in my options bar up here, it's actually changing the blend mode of that tool. I don't want that, so I'm going to right click and say reset the tool. That'll set it back to normal mode. I'll just grab the move tool, and now Shift plus takes me down through the blend modes, and Shift minus would take me back up through the different blend modes. So that's kind of a little way to, Jack Davis said, that's like drive-by design. just try them all, just go down through. So the thing is, there is a keyboard shortcut for every single blend mode if you would like to memorize that, but again, my cells up here aren't working as well as they used to, so I just created little actions that just change the blend mode. But here's the thing, most people, they don't know about this thing called button mode. So an action seems like a whole lot of effort if you actually have to come in here and, you know, select the action and then play the action. That seems like too many moves. And although you can add a keyboard shortcut, you can make anything into an action and then set the action to button mode. And then I see a lot of people that do a lot of production work, they actually move this, they actually move their actions to the bottom, and you can dock it down there.
What?
Yeah, right down there. Yeah, so now, and you can color code them, and you can get all fancy pants, whatever you want to do, but they all just, they're right there. So you go, oh, I don't remember what multiply was, or screen, or overlay, but those are the 3 blend modes I use most often. Or maybe when I'm trying to do like some hand coloring, I want to set it to color. Or maybe I like soft light. So now it's just a button click, so I don't know if that's going to be useful or not. Maybe it is. Hopefully it will be. All right, so that's button mode. And the other thing with actions, I know a lot of people buy actions. I gave a demo once and I said, what did I say? I said, I was writing this action. And one of the engineers afterwards was like, really? You can write actions now? You're not just recording them? It's like, oh, I'm just recording actions. But try not to think of them as like, they don't have to do everything. They don't have to go from start to end, right? Like, how many of you guys add layer masks? Okay, yeah, a few of us, right? So you can just click to add a layer mask, right? Right, you can click on the little mask icon, that adds a layer mask, that's great. Actually, it is really great because if you have a selection, it adds the layer mask based on the selection. So that's pretty cool. But you could also just create your own custom keyboard shortcut for that, right? You could do a little Command M. That's what I have it set to. For make a mask, just makes sense. I had to steal it from curves though. So if you use curves all the time, I swiped it. Okay, so that makes a mask. But what if you wanted to do more than that? Like, what if you knew 90% of the time when I make a mask. I also want my paintbrush. I want it to just reset back to a round paintbrush. I want to make sure that my foreground color is black and all those things, right? That's probably like 5 or 6 clicks. So you do have to get out of button mode. So let's grab our actions. I will undock that. Come over here, because you can't create an action while you're in button mode. So I'll just turn that off. And I might actually, do I already have it? Yeah, prep for masking. Oh, we'll do it really quickly just so you can see what it does. So I'll create a new action, and then I want to add a layer mask. So this will be, yeah, I'll just call it the same thing. Prepare to mask. Dun, 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 dun. We'll just put it in that same blend modes. And I could color code it as well. I could make it green, and we could add function keys and everything, but this will be fine for now, because again, when I put it in button mode, then I don't have to remember the function key. Actually, it shows me if I assign a function key, it'll show it to me in the actions panel, which is quite lovely, but I don't think we need that, so let's go to none. Okay, so I am preparing to mask. So I want to add a layer mask, so I'll go ahead and click on the mask icon. Then I will then tap the B key, that selects the brush tool for me. I am going to select from my brush preset picker this first computational brush. Now, it's already selected right now, so I'm going to select another one, and then I'm going to select it. Yes, we can change that. Don't freak out. Like, people are like, oh, I messed up my action. Yeah, we'll just drag it to the trash in a minute. Just that one little step. This will be just fine. All right, so we've got that. We can reset our color picker because we don't know what the colors are going to be set to. So I'm going to tap the D key. That's going to reset that color picker. And then I'm going to exchange it. I'm going to tap the X key. Why is it? Oh, sorry. I still have this active. Yeah. Sorry. I have to hit return there. Okay. Soft round brush. Got that. Then tap the D key. That gives me my default foreground, background colors. And then X will go ahead and set them so that black is my foreground color. And that's all I want. So I would just hit stop recording. Okay. So now I can just delete these mistakes, right? Because that's a mistake.
Can I hit the delete button?
That's a mistake. I don't know if you can or not. Can you?
I don't know. You said we could.
No, that's on the layers panel. But it does have a nice blue tint, doesn't it? Okay. So now the next time that you want to, let's go up to the cloud layer perhaps up here, and we can use the flyout menu. Go to button mode. Let's see if Julieanne did it right. Prepare to mask. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, all right. Not bad. I guess I should have switched tools to make it more believable, but I think you believe me. All right. So just my point is, actions are really powerful, but they don't have to take you from A to Z. They can just do those 5 or 6 steps that you constantly do over and over and just fold them into one so that you can just click a button and do it. Okay. Something else. It would have been nice if I made the cloud layer visible so you could see what I was doing. Anyway, let's change this back to normal. I should have a button for that. I didn't think about that. Button would be good. All right, let's put our actions back. All right. So let's say I just want my gradient tool, and I'm just going to drag a gradient there. Okay, so I've got my little gradient going from one layer to the next, and then we add these clouds, and I want them in a different overlay mode maybe, or soft light. Okay, so let's say I'm kind of happy with that, but this mask is just, like, I don't want it to go from, well, we know where the mask is white, we can see the contents on the layer, so I can see everything over here on the right-hand side, and then it slowly fades away. Well, I could sit here and pick a different shade of gray and drag the mask again and again using different shades of gray to get a different level of transparency there, or you can just come down to the density slider. And as I move the density slider, you can see it goes from black to white in my layers panel, but as I move the density slider down, see how it changes it to gray? So yeah, so you can always kind of peel back that mask a little bit by just changing the density slider after the fact. Totally non-destructive. You save it, you close the file, you come back tomorrow, you can still change the density slider just like you can change the feather slider. Right, so you guys know there's the non-destructive feathering here too. So if I did come in here, let's just fill that with white. So let's say you you got your lasso tool and you spent like a really long time making this really precise selection, right? And actually we'll just, let's just add the mask based on that selection, okay? So I just add the mask and I didn't put a feather amount because I don't ever know how much of a feather to add. It's going to depend on how soft I want the edge and the resolution of the file and womp, 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 womp. So I just wait, and after the fact, I can go ahead and zoom in here to like 100% and then just use my feather slider. You can see as I move it over, it's feathering the mask. Now, the key to this though is you need to have a selection where the whole selection needs the same amount of feathering, right? It's going to add the same amount of feathering around the whole thing. So if you have part of a, like if you made a mask around somebody's hand that is hard edged and then their hair, and you added a 3-pixel feather, it's going to feather the hand and the hair. So that's going to be a little weird. So this works much better when you have like a hard edged object and you just need to add a feather. Or if the whole object is soft, has the same softness to the edge, and you just need to maybe add a smidge more. A smidge more. It's a little bit more than a wee bit. I might have that backwards, I'm not sure. Okay, but that's the properties panel that I don't know that people use that very often. Okay, let's close that. We don't need to look at that anymore. And let's go back to Lightroom. Now, I already started this. Which would be better? I wanted to make this composite here. I thought that would be kind of fun to make. So back in grid view, should I make that or should we move on to like other things? I think we better move on to other things. I'll come back and make that if I can. It's really easy. You wouldn't learn anything new, so it's fine. Okay, so instead, we're going to combine these two images right here. So let's open this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When you just did that, where you took those 3 pictures out of Lightroom and put them into Photoshop, when you save that file, will it be back in Lightroom or no?
No, it will not. That's a great question. So because the way I did it, I started with a canvas open in Photoshop, right? So when I grabbed the 3 photos from Lightroom and dragged them onto the canvas and it placed those 3 documents, Lightroom has no idea about that canvas. So after I save and close the Photoshop file, I would need to go to Lightroom and wherever I saved it, I would just need to right click on that folder and say synchronize, or just drag it on top of the Lightroom icon, or however you'd like to synchronize your files. Something else, because there was going to be the yelling. Yeah, do you notice I didn't drag it to the... Okay, first of all, you have to have the file open, because otherwise if I grab these 2 images and just drag them on top of Photoshop, I don't even know if it'll open it. I would usually drag them to the dock, right? So if I drag these down to the Photoshop icon, it's just going to open them, but not into the canvas. So if you want to do what I did, the key there is you have to open the blank document first so that you can drag and drop them and place them into that document. All right, so I'm going to hit, I would hit done, which is not the right thing to do. All right, so anyway, for speed's sake, since I am going to use the path blur filter, I'll just open them as smart objects. It'll be fine. I don't really need that one as a smart object. That's all right. Lots of conversations going on here, so we'll just open them, and you know what? If I don't need it, I will rasterize it. I know. Okay. So when you just hand it off as a smart object, then it just hands it off to Photoshop directly. It doesn't have to go through the camera raw dialog. Okay, so it's just reading the format. All right, so there's my 2 open documents. So it's this open document that I want to add some motion to the water in the foreground, and then I want to put in a new sky and just make it a little bit more exciting. So of course that's hard to do. It's not like you can put a zodiac, like a tripod in a zodiac and get a long exposure. So if I got a long exposure, then obviously the iceberg would be blurry. So how am I going to do this? So I'm just going to do it after the fact. I'm going to, because this is a smart object, I'm going to add the path blur filter, right? I'm going to go to filter, I'm going to go to blur gallery, and then go over to path blur. You really should just use the find command. I know, okay? So path blur, what does this do? Oh, and so I know someone's going to ask a question. So I published a book called Passenger Seat. I don't know if any of you guys knew that. It's the Lightroom workflow, and it's got all these motion blur images. These are all done in camera. Like, I didn't do these using path blur. This is captured in camera just because someone will ask. I know. All right. So path blur in Photoshop, and you might ask why? Because it would be really hard to get this effect in Photoshop. Because never mind. Okay. It just would be. Well, because it's 3 dimensions, right? So you've got leaves and branches and everything overlapping that are different distances from the camera. And so to actually emulate that in Photoshop would be very hard. To make water move in Photoshop like this is going to be very easy. So what the path blur filter gives me is a direction line. And we can change the direction of the blur. So there's a little, I don't know if you can see that here. Let me put that over, maybe white. Yeah, there's a little blue arrow right there. And we can change, you'll notice you can actually use the on-screen little circle here in order to change things like the endpoint speed. But all of your options are over here on the right-hand side. So I'm just doing a basic blur. We can change the speed, make it faster or slower, right? You can change the direction. I don't actually want this to be going in a direction, so let's just make it go from left to, well, it's not that I don't want it going at an angle. It does need to go in a direction, okay? So, and then I just decide, all right, how do I want that speed? Right about there. Now you can go in and edit blur shapes, which means I could put a little bit of like a bump on this if I wanted to, right? And in any shape or form that I want. And some of you might be thinking, well, wait, why would you want to do that? Oops, let's delete that. Grab this again. Okay, so all right, so the way I took these pictures, right? So you can see there's a tree there, right? And it looks like the tree is still, but everything's blurring around it, right? And the reason that works is because when you're in the passenger seat, not driving, when you're in the passenger seat, and I'm looking down the road and traveling in this direction, the direction is the direction line right there, right? And the speed is however fast the driver's driving. And what I'm doing is I've got a shutter speed that's a little slow, like maybe a 15th or a 30th a second. I can't tell you exactly because it depends on how fast the person's driving. And it also depends on how far away the object is. But basically, as you drive by, I'm trying to lock focus on an object and pan at the same speed, but in the opposite direction as the vehicle. And if you get that to align, what happens is what you get is this effect where you can see it here, where everything that's in front of the thing in focus goes in one direction, and it's like a merry-go-round. Everything's going in one direction, and everything that's behind the tree goes in another direction, okay? So now you see why it would be hard to do that in Photoshop. That's the direction line, the path, and this speed. But what it doesn't account for are the little in lines where I said it could make a bump, because I might not pan exactly horizontal. My camera lens might go whoop, whoop every time I pan it. So that's what that last control does, is it allows me to move my camera basically as it pans. And that's how you get like that bump in there, okay? All right, and I will use it when we add the second sky there. All right, but for right now, oops, let's delete that. Okay, and whoops, I've got a thing. All right, so at this point, I'm going to delete the whole thing, and then I'm just going to draw one. 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks to end the line. That's my blur. Everything's good. I tap return or enter, and I apply that. Now, it's going to take a second to do all that. It's kind of heavy in its computation. Oh, there was something else I didn't show you. You can have it centered, or you can have it directional. Like, people always ask us with the, what did we use before this? What was the name of that filter? Motion filter. Motion always went in both directions. You couldn't get the motion just to go one way. You'd have to blur the whole thing and then paint it out and mask it where you didn't want it. So this one, you can actually have it center, or you can have it go both directions. Okay, but here's where I didn't get what was happening at all. Because I was thinking, okay, so this is great. I've got my blur here in the foreground, and I don't want my blur, obviously, over the iceberg. So I'm going to grab my gradient, do whatever it takes, the thing, I don't want it. All right, the iceberg. So I'm going to grab the smart filter, I've got my gradient, And I'm just going to go from black to white, and since black hides and white shows, I'm just going to draw a really tiny little line right about there, okay? So now the water's blurred, but the iceberg isn't. Now, I want to add that other image. Oh, it's already open, okay? So this image is what I want to add, and I don't actually want it to be a smart object, so I'm just going to rasterize it. And you might be wondering why, and the reason is because I just want to select part of it. So I'm going to grab the move tool, and maybe, I bet I don't need more than like that much of the sky. In fact, I probably only, we'll just mirror it. We'll make it really easy. All right, so let's just do a little image. Yeah, I can just crop it down to there, that's fine. Actually, I didn't even need to do that. I just need to see both of my images. I have my move tool selected, and I can drag and drop that over here. All right, and then we can close that. We don't need it open. And, oh, it's kind of small, isn't it? That's all right. All right, so we're just going to transform it larger. So I scaled down a little bit just because I'm going to use free transform, Command-T, and make this a little bit bigger. I just want to make sure it's at least half the width, right? And I don't want it to be exact. You can mirror it if you want. You do whatever you want with your sky, all right? I'm going to make it like this. I'm going to do a little Command-J. That's going to duplicate it. The duplicated one, I'm just going to flip it horizontally and just scoot that right over till it snaps, right? And then we can merge those two together. Okay, so just Command-E, just merge those. Whoa, is that really bright? Can you see detail there? No, okay, well, we'll hide it then. But there's detail in there. It's just, we got a little hot projector, no big deal. So I want to go ahead and add a little bit of a blur to this, right? So I can convert this into a smart object so that I could add my filter and it would be non-destructive. So let's do that. We'll convert it to a smart object. And here's what was bugging me. Let's hide it for a minute. So I thought, well, I'll do something really easy. I'll just make the mask for this. Well, we'll do it in a minute because I want to show it to you. I want to show you how it might fail if we don't do it right. And that way we'll all learn. All right, so I've got this, everything's going fine. I go and I add my filter again. Since it's the last filter, I can just hold down the Option, right? And that will bring up the filter. Now in this case, I might want this to be a little bit of a horseshoe, right? So that these clouds go up here and these clouds go up here, or, you know, I don't know, it might not be on Earth. You can make them go any way you want. Point being, we'll go ahead and do that. Add a little bit more speed to that. Tap Return or Enter in order to apply it. All right. So that was just quickly. We just want to add a little bit of motion in a different direction, obviously, than the water. Okay, so it will do that. And now I thought this is going to be so easy. All I have to do is come back here to this layer and just select the sky. And that should be totally easy, right? I mean, it's the sky, right? So we can grab like the quick select, tap the W key, and come up here and drag across. And I was like, what? What is going on? Like, why can't you see that that's an iceberg and that's the cloud? It just seemed like I was like, okay, and then I would get the wand tool and it would do the same thing. Because that whole layer is blurred. And I'm hiding the blur, right? If I hold down the Shift key and toggle this off, oh, I see why it can't see the difference between sky and iceberg. I've blurred them so beautifully, there's no line to stop it, right? So, so what do I do to select that? Well, I can just turn off the blur gallery. If I hide the blur by toggling the eye icon, I've got my quick select. Now when I drag, it's like, oh, I get it. Sorry, you're the one who blurred it, Kost. You know, I was just doing what I was told. Okay, so now we have that selected. Now we can come up here to this top layer. I can click to add my mask. It will add the mask for me. And then I just need to enable that blur again. It'll take a second because it's got to recalculate it, but it will add that blur to the foreground. So there you go. So, okay. Oh, thank you. All right. How are we doing? You guys doing okay? Wow, that was enthusiastic. Okay, let's go full screen or something. I mean, wow, look at that. That's awesome. All right. No. That's like, now it's just a pity clap. Forget that. Never
Did it really look
mind.
like that when you saw it?
It didn't know, it felt like that. See, it felt like that when I saw it. Okay,
Can we use that statement?
what?
It felt like.
It felt like that. It did. I mean, oh, it looked like that. Okay. This, I was just going to show you really quickly that if I was going to make a selection, like in this image, if I just wanted to take all that yellow rock and kind of change the color, I could probably do it in Camera Raw or in Lightroom, but if I had to paint it, I might use, you know, the auto mask for the edges, but really it's going to be easier if I just come in here and use, and I can even do this on a smart object, right? I don't have to open it as a layer-based document. I can say edit in and then open it as a smart object in Photoshop. Or I could just drag it down to the Photoshop icon. It's just going to open it up. It is a smart object. Oh, yeah. Ignore what I said. I couldn't just drag it down to the Photoshop icon. I had to open it as a smart object. Okay. And now I can select this however I want. So I've got quick select tool already selected. So let's just go over here and do that, right? So we come over here, and the nice thing about the quick select is that you're training it as you drag. So every time I click and drag over some areas of color, it's adding those areas to the, you think about it, it's like storing a palette of colors that I keep adding to. Now I've added a little bit too much, so I need to hold down the Option key and just erase this blue and come over here and probably erase that. It erased a little too much, so I let go of the Option key and then just drag that. And it's kind of a little bit of back and forth, and I got a little bit of a soft edge, you know, where it's going into the water here, so we'll just have to kind of experiment with that. But basically, once you have created your selection, especially if it's something like trees or something all fuzzy, or where they're not really joined in well, you might want to go to Select and Mask. And I find this to be very true when I'm using the Quick Select tool, because sometimes the Quick Select tool's mask works perfectly. And if you look at it, it looks a little bit chunky, but it actually works great. It's kind of similar to like when we make the panoramas and we use those masks now, and sometimes the mask, you look at the mask in the panorama and you're like, wow, that's like a hard edge mask that you're just cutting up there, but it works really well. But sometimes I like to smooth it out. So you can click on Select and Mask. You can also, there's a new feature in Photoshop where I think you can actually, if you already had a mask made, you could just double click the mask and it would launch Select and Mask. And it's just a preference. You can toggle it off if you don't want it. But since I haven't made the mask yet, I'm going to go into Select and Mask. All right, so let's look at this just as black and white. So black and white, going to 100%. So this is what I mean by, you can see that the mask looks a little bit chunky. I'm going to go up to this area right here because I thought that looked a little chunkier up there. All right, so a little bit, you'd be like, wow, that really works, but it does work. But sometimes you just want to smooth it a little bit. So I come in here and I just use my up arrows and just smooth out the edge of that mask. Now, what you should know about this is a great way, I don't know if you've ever spent like an hour with the pen tool drawing your path around something and you realize that you didn't quite get the edge. You're like, you either have a halo on one side or the other, so you either need to choke or spread the mask a little bit, meaning if the mask is going along the book, right, you're either cutting just a wee bit into the book or you've got this halo around the edge of the book. So if you think about how this would work, let's take the smoothing off. So now it's going from white to black, right? If I add a feather, what do I have? I have a mask that goes from white through many levels of gray to black. Well, if you add this feather, you now have this whole playground of values that you can shift your edge to move it either in or out from that mask. So you can either choke or spread the mask based on the amount of feather that you add in here. Again, this works really well if you've got a hard edge object. If you've got hair flowing or a horse's mane or something, you're probably not going to be adding or choking or spreading that mask. Maybe you are, I don't know. but usually on harder edge objects, I find this works really well. So basically the feather, I'm obviously exaggerating it here. You would want to add probably a small feather. If you add a 3 pixel feather, now you can just subtly move the edge back and forth, right? Or you could add a bigger feather, in which case you'll be able to shift the edge in a greater value, all right? So I'm actually going to reset those because this doesn't need to be shifted that much, but I do want to just smooth it. All right, and do I have a little redraw? What's going on here? No. Scoot this out of the way. I'm gonna bet that's a redraw. All right, I'm gonna click OK. I'm taking my chances. All right. And now I would go ahead and apply whatever it is I want to apply, right? So probably I want to just apply something like an adjustment layer. So let's do, I don't know, hue saturation. Let's go ahead and, actually let's do color balance. I'm going to undo that. And color balance will be a little easier for me to go in here and just quickly say, hey, I want a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow in there. And you can choose whether or not you want to preserve the luminosity. In this case, I'm going to turn it off. A little bit more red. All right, and tap enter, or actually it's already applied. So then, of course, this has a mask, right? It created the mask based on the selection, but I can also come in here with my paintbrush if I need to and get a little bit bigger brush. Maybe set it down to, what, like 20 or 30% opacity, and then just come in here and paint. And as long as I'm painting with black, I could just paint out, like if I want the sky here to be a little bit bluer in the reflection, we could just zoom in and paint that out. Let's go up to 100% just so I can do it really quickly so you can see what's going on. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so that's what else, besides all of the layering and everything, when I can make a selection that easily and I don't have to sit there in Lightroom or in Camera Raw and paint with that little paintbrush everywhere that I want to apply my effect, I'm going to come to Photoshop and do that. Okay, let's close that and let's come back to Lightroom for a moment. Painting and retouch. Okay. Let's open this file for a minute. Now, some retouching stuff. I didn't even plan on this, but I don't want those birds there, and I want that bird right over there. Why? Because all of my birds have to be in a row. I wish they were ducks. I wish they were ducks. All right. So how are we going to do this? Well, the reason I wanted to show it because this actually didn't used to work until they made this change and gave us some other options to the patch tool. So, and the content aware move tool. So the patch tool, I could just come over here and say, all right, these birds, bad birds. You got to go away. Bye-bye. You got to go. All right. And it did a really good job, and they're gone. All right, now I can come over here and select this bird, right? Gosh, a little hard to select on this countertop. All right, but this time I don't want to patch, I actually want to move them, right? So that's when we have this content aware move. But you would think, like, this is a blue sky. Like, visually it seems like it should be something easy to do, but evidently it's a lot harder than that. So 2 things. One, when you're using the content aware move, like as if I could code my way out of a paper bag. I'm like, oh, it should be really easy. Yeah, right. Visually. I'm sorry if you're an engineer. I'm sorry. I know I couldn't do it. I wouldn't know to start with a 1 or a 0. All right. So you can also scale these now. Did you know that? So as you move something, before you set it down, because that totally makes sense, right? Because you move something that's probably moving in perspective. So we could have like, rah! I'd have to make a sound effect if it did that. All right, so we tap return or enter. Now, here's the important thing. Okay, the edges are not matching, but I still have a selection. I am not deselecting, I am hiding the edges right now. I'm using Command H to hide the edges. What did I would like to use Command H to hide or show selections. So those are extras. Okay, so I've just hidden that, but you can see the blue, right? It's not seamless, okay? This tool will still obey commands in the options bar. Like other tools don't. Like, right, if you have the lasso tool and you make a selection and you go into the options bar and you say, ooh, I want a feather of 3, the lasso says, that's great, next time you draw. Okay, but it has nothing to do with what you've already done. That's the past. Okay? Here, it's like, oh yeah, no, I get it. So if you want to change the structure, for example, And sometimes it's kind of funny because it moves the wings a little, like, like in a mid-flight or something. But structure is really more about the texture sometimes, all right? So we can probably set that back down to there. And then we can come over here with a color now and say, yes, I need you to blend. Oh, can you see that? I can still see it. Hold on. Please hold. Color matching is important to me. Please hold. Go here. Let's play with both of them. Oh, gone. Yeah? I don't see it. Do you see it? Like, do you see the, you could probably go even a little more. Yeah, so now it's seamless, right? So just know that you can still, because I didn't, once you deselect, if I set it down, but it's actually floating right now, right? So that's why I can use the tools in the options bar, okay? And then we'll deselect it. Now it's set down, and now I can't use those tools to modify what I just did.
So how do you know what to do with structure and color? You just have to take experiment?
I moved the sliders until it does what I want. So sometimes you can really see what it's doing as far as the structure goes. You will see the texture changing in the image. But sometimes, like what I just did, I don't know, because I would have thought that would have been a color thing, and yet changing the structure alone didn't do it. Changing the color alone didn't do it, but changing them both together did do it. So tomorrow, I'm pretty sure if any engineers are listening, might have a memo on my desk that might enlighten me a little bit better. Yes?
I don't know if this is off topic, but if you have a panorama and you have different shades of blue sky, for instance, can you use the same technique, or is it too much? Too big?
You may or may not. So the question is, what if you have this huge panorama and you're getting seams between the panels in the panorama? Could you use content-aware move? Blah, 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 blah. No, it'd be really kind of nice if you could use like one of the auto tools so that it would just do it for you. Whether that's auto blend layers or even really paying attention to those exposures when you're shooting it. Maybe in manual mode. I know, don't. I'm just saying, it might save you time later. Don't get mad at me for saying that. All right, we're closing that. Bracket. Just bracket, yes. Okay, so then this is kind of another example. Oh gosh, we only have 15 minutes left. Okay, so this is another example. I'll just go to full screen mode where there's the northern lights in the ground. Again, okay, so you can barely see it, but it's fog up there, and it was so gorgeous. And just a minute before, there was no ice in the sea, right? And so you've got this gorgeous, clear area of ice, and then all of a sudden it just got too slushy, or maybe it's the opposite, and it wasn't slushy enough, and so you get this. So I'm not going to try to go in with the clone stamp tool. There's not enough good data in there, but certainly I can use that to create that. Right? So I'll just quickly open these two that I have here. Let's escape out of there. I'm just going to open this in Photoshop, and I want to edit the original. There's only 3 layers that I use to do this. It's not very hard. I actually think it's more difficult while you're shooting, because you should be trying to think about where am I going to get the content to cover up the information that I don't want. And for a lot of photographers, that's a very different way of thinking. Like you're thinking like, I got to get the shot. And I'm like, yeah, no, I like that aspect of the shot. And that's the part that I can control right now. So how am I going to, while I have the same quantity of light, quality of light, direction of light, how do I take a photograph of something else in the scene to fill in that area, right? So I have a lot of pictures that if someone was looking over my shoulder while they're editing, they're like, wow, fog, awesome. Ooh, water, nothing in it. You're talented. You're a minimalist? Yes. But the point is I knew, like, when I saw that, I thought, no, I know it can be so much better. Like, that's not my feeling. It shouldn't be that cluttered. So this image right here, if we hide the mask, that's that other photograph. Just put right on top and then masked so that I'm using the base. So I'm not stretching anything. I'm not stamping over anything. I'm not patching anything. Nothing like that. And then what's the top? Oh, yeah. Then, yeah, you got to remember about the whole reflection thing, right? Oh, so, yeah, you got to, otherwise that's kind of a dead giveaway. So all I did, the reflection is just a copy of the iceberg flipped and blurred a little bit, right? And then pull it back so it's not as, and actually I think, no, I didn't do it here, but if I was good, what I would do then is I would also blur it and put a gradient in that blur, so at the base where it's near the water, it would be a sharper edge, and then as it comes forward, the edge of the blur, basically the blur would be more. So I would blur the layer to the maximum softness that I want the shadow, and then use a gradient to hide the blur towards the base of the iceberg where the water and the iceberg meet, so that there's a sharper edge there, and then it slowly gets blurrier, right? Because that's how it would work. It would get blurrier towards us, kind of like how drop shadows work. Okay. All right, so that was just one, you guys could totally do that. The same with the bird, like the bird, I just moved it over. Really, like, look at you. Sometimes I'm amazed that, like, it's not that hard once you kind of like learn a few things. Like, okay, so when I was first starting out, I probably would have gone and tried to select, I'd be like, well, I want to move this thing, so I need to select that thing, right? No, like, wow, that's way too hard. Grab that. Grab more, grab all of that, kick it to its own layer, Command J, move it over, okay? And then just say, all right, well, let's hide that now. So I'm going to add my mask, but I'm going to hold down the Option key. Okay, so that just hid this whole layer. Look, toggling it on and off does nothing, right? I've hidden the whole layer. But if I get my paintbrush and I paint with, let's get a little bit harder of an edge brush. Now this is where it gets kind of touchy-feely. I can't tell you exactly how hard you need your brush because it depends on, what you're trying to paint in, how you're trying to mask, how soft you want the edge and everything, and the resolution of the file. And then you just make sure that you're painting with white. And you're like, well, I'm obviously going to need to replace this, so I'm just going to start painting that area. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can spend more time if you want. That's fine.
Where's the other bird?
Where's the other bird? Well, you got to make sure you take at least one more picture of a bird, right? So I kind of wait a second, right? Because the bird's got to move or something, otherwise it'd be kind of boring. And then we could just, the bird's farther away, so this might be the little brother. I'm not really sure. But I could probably just grab the marquee tool. All right, get my little move tool. Meow. Uh-oh, bird's far away. Bird's far away. Because I wasn't gonna show you just how lazy I was. Do you want to know how lazy I was? Watch. This is how lazy I was. Command 1. Let's zoom in. Where's the bird? Get the marquee tool. There's the bird. What are we gonna do? Well, we make sure we're on the right layer. We do Command J. Jump it to its own layer. Let's transform it. We can just flip that. I don't know. You might want to flip it vertical or something. I don't really know. All right, and we can just do that. And then I think we'll just grab the brush. Oops, that's a little big. Wow, teeny tiny. And this is a pretty small area, so I don't mind going in here and let's add our mask, Command M. And what are we painting with our brush? What's our foreground color? There we go. Bye bye. All right, and maybe, you can't have it exact, so maybe like I don't know what I want here. I don't know, like, hey, bird, no. All right, anyway, just make it a little bit different or something. But I bet I could make this other one fit in. Where's this other one? Oh, you're sharp too. You're a little sharper than that other one. Let's put him up here. Let's move him up here. Where's he? I don't know. Anyway, that's just goofy. Who would do that? Who would do that? Look at how cute they are here. And I think I ended up just moving them both over. I don't remember. What does it look like? Yeah, so I moved them both over. But they're the same bird. I mean, look at it. I should probably retouch that so they don't have the same spot. All right. Then this one, another one of those. This I just flipped. I mean, what a gorgeous foreground. I did nothing to the foreground. You just take all that good data from the foreground, copy it, flip it on the top, mask out where you don't need it, right? And then sometimes it is true. Like sometimes it just takes insanity, right? So, and I'm fine with this. Like it is the process. I'm okay. Like some things take time, you know? So if I have an image like this and I want to make it better, it's not all about like one swipe, right? So let's do a little command 1 here just so you can see. Yeah. Okay, so let's start on the edge here. So what did it look like before? Well, it looked like that. But we don't want that. Well, that's going to take a lot of time. Yeah, it does. How's that? Oh, more time. Right? But it looks so much better, right? You give it a little breathing space. It's got a nice horizon. It's clean. It's crisp. You're a liar. Yes, it looked like that. But it felt like that. Right? Come over here. Like I didn't want things like, see, like this little guy, like moving up and everything. Like I just wanted to take away everything that didn't belong. Right? That's what we do when we're telling our story. When you take a photograph of something, when you design something, everything in that design, in that logo, in the type that you use, in the photo that you use, in the style that you apply to it, everything has to work together, right? To communicate your one message. So if my message is clean and calm and minimalist, then I'm going to get rid of anything that doesn't belong, and that's all the extra stuff. It doesn't belong. Okay? All right, so yeah, sometimes it takes a long time. I show you these demo files and it looks all really easy and whiz bang, but some images take me a while to do. All right, and then last but not least, I just want to let me just open up this file at least. Command E, edit the original. So this is a 3-layered document, is that correct? Yes. So what do we have? We have the left photo, we have a center photo, and we have the center photo. So whether you're a photographer or a designer, we export files all the time. So a lot of photographers actually do save as still. They still do a file save as, and they'll save it as a JPEG file, which is fine. It leaves your current multi-layered document open and it saves out a copy. But we actually have improved the JPEG compression when you export your files, right? So it used to be there was this command save for web, and it's still there. It's file export and then save for web. It's still there if you need to make like an animated GIF or something. But you can also do a quick export. The quick export by default is a PNG file, but you can change that. Look at right here, export preferences. It's the same as going under the preferences and going to export, and you can just change that and say, no, my quick export, I don't export to PNG, I export to JPEGs all the time, and I want my default quality to be maybe 90. So you enter that in, you ask it where to export it. I want my copyright and contact information to be included, and up to you whether or not you want to convert it to sRGB. If you go into the web, probably yes. Okay? So you can set that up, and then you can just use the keyboard shortcut to do a quick export so that you don't have to come down to the menu every time, right? So you can do your quick export, or you can do an export as. Export as allows you to customize it. So I say that for the most part, I want this to be JPEG, right? But I want that to be probably 80%, because probably I'm not sending it to a printer. If I was sending it to a printer, I'd want it at 100%. But this is going to cut my file size at least a third, maybe half the original file size. But look at, I also have all these other options, because a lot of times I'm working full res, and then I just want to send someone a JPEG, and it does not have to be 8,000 pixels across, right? It can just be, hey, I just want to send this, and for the maximum width, I might want it 1200 or 800 or whatever it is that you want. All right, so it will resize it for you. It also will add a little canvas around it if you wanted something like that. It will add your copyright and contact, and it will convert and embed a color profile if you want. So that's pretty cool. It also will do multiple options at one time. So you can say, yes, I want one of these, or these are the, X factors. The X factors. It's funny. Okay, it's not that funny. But anyway, you can enter in here, and then you can add a suffix. But here's where it gets really cool. So this is if you've got a multi-layered document and you just want to whoosh, send it off to someone, right? Okay, what if you've got your 3-layer file? You're like, yeah, I need to send all 3 layers as separate documents. Okay, don't go up here to File and Export. From the Layers panel, right-click and say Export As. It brings up the Export As dialog, but now you can see on the left-hand side, I have options for each one of the different layers. So whatever layers you have selected, you do have to select the layers. Or you can select layer groups. So if you have a layer group and you want to export that all as one unit, you can just select the layer group and it kind of like temporarily flattens, or it'll export like a flattened version as a JPEG. But you can select all of these at once, and that way you only have to set up your options here one time, you know, as your JPEGs and your quality and all that stuff. So just remember when you're exporting, if you want one single flat file as a JPEG or as a PNG, whatever your preference is, go from the export menu or use the keyboard shortcut. If you want to export individual layers or layer groups, make sure that you start from the layers panel. Okay? All right. We also, I heard that. I have 1 minute left. Okay, that's online. That's online. All right, just something quick for designers as well and photographers, because you guys use type sometimes. So you should just know that we now support glyphs, right? So if you have a line of type, I know there's like, it's not just a panel, it's in line, right? So we have a panel that you can go play with all your glyphs, but you can also just grab them in line. So you can say, oh, well, that looks better. And what happens is you get this little highlight, and then you can just come down here and say like, ooh, no, that looks even better. Well, now, are there any alternates for the L's? Well, yes, there is. Well, hey, fancy pants. 2 of those, that looks a little like a lollipop, but that's okay. Anyway, you guys are the designers, not me. I just show you that talent does not actually get installed when you download it. All right, so you can select anything here, but wait, there's more. I'm going to discard that, go really quickly back here. We're going to open this document. Okay, edit as original. What is she doing? So I love this font. Not really, but anyway, let's say you love this typeface here. Eden's Hotel, that's awesome. Looks like somewhere I want to stay. All right. So, but I don't know my fonts, so I had to take an incomplete in that class. So I just made a type layer and typed out the word. And now with the type layer selected, I can come up here to my type menu. Oh, well, we better actually select it. Let me get my marquee tool. I'm going to select, because it won't know, like, do you want me to look at the word notice? What do you want me to look at? I want you to look at Eden's Hotel. And I want you to try to match that font.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is a subscription thing, right? Because when you subscribe, you get access to fonts via Typekit. If you're a Creative Cloud Complete subscriber, you get a ton more fonts. If you're not, if you're just CCPP, then you get some fonts. You can always go buy more fonts, but anyway, it will show you the typefaces on your local machine. It'll try to match it, and if it's local, you can actually click on those and say, oh, hey, nice, pretty good, pretty close. But it will also go and find fonts that are available on Typekit. So obviously they're not installed on my machine, so I can't just click on it and have it update, but I can just click on the cloud icon and it will sync. So I don't know if you guys install fonts, but remember how it used to be? No, now it's just going up online, it's finding the font, it's downloading the font, it's installing the font, and now I have that font installed. Okay, I don't think that matched really well, but that's not the point. Let's go try another one right here. Let's go, so now it's syncing Typekit, it's looking for that. I wonder if the S and the H, I might not want, well, yeah, okay, so I'll click OK on that one, but I might want to select something a little bit maybe not so crazy, like maybe the whole letter should appear, like maybe that S or the H is throwing it, right? So let's try it now. So now let's go to Type, and then Match Font, and Euro Style Black. All right,
That's better.
let's try this one. And go wild. No, but it's interesting. It's got kind of a little funky thing there. Let's try one more. One more. Roll the dice for Eden's Hotel. Startling as that is. Actually, I think that might do it. The D is a little weird. But anyway, you get the point. And I am out of time. I'm 3 minutes over. I know you guys probably want to get out and get home. Drive safe in the rain. I'm more than happy to take questions, but the second I say I will take questions, half of you will want to leave. So you are allowed to leave. Time's up. Pencils down. You may leave, but if you would like to stay, I will take questions. Okay? Does anyone have a question? Yes?
So you've given us great tools to build really big panoramas.
Yes.
Like I can build a 120,000 pixel panorama, but a lot of the filters don't work above, well, they say 70, but it seems to be a little much. Are you guys going to fix that?
If you guys means me, no. But as far as you guys go, so I'd love to get your feedback.